is that we have basically enshrined in law with this new Act. Now, it's a fledgling process, it's new, but it's very exciting. We've never before had the government have to come and negotiate on ideas and proposals that come up from councils. Another interesting aspect of the process is that I get to sit at that negotiating table, so it's a public, open situation. And we have, as I said, we have had some successes before. Nothing quite as ambitious as this idea, but we have had some interesting and exciting successes before. One example was Sheffield were very concerned about post office closures, and they used this and made a proposal under this Act to get more power over the post office network, and they actually reversed post office closures, and they actually saved all the money on the council budget. It was a wonderful success story. So, we've already had the seeds of potential. So I think this is why we're being more ambitious with this. So the hope is that if we got this proposal submitted, that process would allow us to see success, and we would see this power granted. So that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm very keen to have a debate and a discussion, and hear your thoughts and ideas on it. But if you think this sounds like a good idea, then please write to the mayor. Please get others as well to write. The more letters he receives, the better. They don't need to be long, they don't need to be complicated. As long as he gets a letter saying, please submit this proposal. There's a couple of other things on your seat, particularly a feedback form, which I'd really appreciate if you could fill that out too. It's very helpful for us to sort of understand what people think of what we're doing. So I think I've spoken enough for now. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll pass you on to the next person. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. I think you've given us a little bit of a ray of hope, if not more than that, so thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce Molly Scott Cato. And Molly has been working as a green economist for the past 15 years, since the realisation that most of the environmental problems we're facing arise from the bad design of the economy. She now works as an academic at Roehampton University in London. And her students are lively and interested young people from a wide range of backgrounds and countries, so she's got her feet on the ground. She's been involved in the Green Party for 23 years, including standing in general elections and European elections, and is now the leader of the Green Group on Stroud District Council, where Greens are part of the administration. And that means they've got some real power. And they've recently achieved funding for a hydro scheme and a £100,000 grant for local food projects. So a bit of experience there, and I'm sure we're going to hear more from Molly. So over to you, Molly.
So I'll wave at you, shall I, when we get to that's just what she said to me. Go to the first slide. Okay, is that working? Yeah, brilliant. So this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to pretend I'm a real economist and talk a little bit about demand and then a little bit about supply, but it's kind of got my own flavour with it. And then I'm going to think about what competition really means and whether supermarkets are really competing, because I think this is key to winning this argument with supermarkets. Is it a fair competition? And yeah, then I've got to have a go at capitalism, so I do that at the end. Okay, slide number 1. Okay, so I got this from the Ashton Gate blogger. I hope that person's here. Oh, disappointed. I said make a
He's on holiday.
He's on holiday, obviously. Oh, perhaps it's a she, who knows? Because we've got 2 supermarket proposals in Stroud at the moment, and of course as the Green Group we're completely outraged, and I'm getting regular phone calls from people saying what a great idea they are, and I say, are you being paid to say that? And they say no, and we have a bit of an argument, and in the end they say yes. And basically nobody wants the supermarkets except the supermarkets and the people who pay, who the people they pay, the lobbyists. Anyway, what they argue is that they need to have more supermarkets in Stroud because they're doing this bizarre thing called overtrading. And this is where I got to the Ashton Gate blogger, because that person had a real, investigation. What the hell does this overtrading thing mean? And it's just a complete bizarre concept that if supermarkets are really busy, you obviously don't have enough supermarkets. Whereas my way of looking at that is, if the supermarkets are really busy, they're obviously getting an unfair advantage compared to the local shops, so you need to sort that out. And that's, I think, where we come to the levy and the question about fair competition, and actually a proposal for charging for parking, which is what we're thinking about suggesting in Stroud. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself there, but I just wanted to say about overtrading that I know, because I work in economics, that if you want to sort of browbeat people and confuse them, you invent some dubious concept that sounds really technical. And that's what overtrading is. And if you look up overtrading on Google, you find out that there is such a concept, but it's a concept that's to do with kind of financial trading. It has nothing to do with supermarkets. And in the context of supermarkets, I think it's just a complete, not a red herring, just a complete deliberate confusion to it. But the trouble is, our planners in Stroud say, oh, overtrading's going on. You know, we're now having a row with them saying it's not a real concept. We're not going to take it as a legal concept because it's not a real one. So anyway, it's just an example of how supermarkets behave in a really underhand way, I think. Okay. Now here's what it's like to work in a supermarket. What a lovely job. How beautiful and happy that young woman looks. Again, I was searching on Google to try and find a picture, and it's impossible to find a picture of what a supermarket's really like. And I know why that is, because several years ago I did another report on supermarkets, and I went into my local supermarket and tried to take a photo of what it's actually like in there. You know, with all those appalling bits of advertising and everybody looking really flustered, and, you know, people that don't look like this but actually looking really stressed and unhappy. And the manager actually came up to me and told me I was not allowed to take a photograph in that supermarket. So I've got this one as a sort of ironic representation of what life in a supermarket might be like. So, you know, what is a job in a supermarket like? I would suggest not a very pleasant job. The proposals in Stroud, one of the proposals says they're going to create up to 250 jobs. So again, we've objected to that, saying, well, what is up to 250 jobs? Is it 2 jobs? Is it 25 jobs? You know, it's a completely meaningless concept, and again, I think, deliberately confusing. In fact, here's some information from a survey that was conducted by the National Retail Planning Forum, and it found that however many jobs they actually create, 276 jobs in the local economy are lost every time a supermarket opens. So there's some real data about the jobs impact of supermarkets. And what kind of jobs are they? Actually, they're often very unpleasant jobs. They're not, you don't have very good terms and conditions. Recently there was a scandal about Tesco using these 0 hours contracts, and such contracts are an example of the sort of precarious labour market that we've been left with now. A lot of people are not, most people I would say, are not in those contracts voluntarily, and the evidence shows that, because 18% of people that work on those contracts are actively seeking alternative employment compared to 7% of people on standard contracts. So they're not popular contracts, they're the sort of contracts people have often when they have no choice. Right, so I'm sure Joy is going to cover more of this about why we should relocalise our food economy, but I think often people object to supermarkets because of the sort of profiteering and because of the food miles and so on, but actually I think this is a much more serious issue. I think this is an issue about basic food security, and the kind of distribution systems that supermarkets operate are not only energy intensive and therefore environmentally damaging, but they're also actually leaving us very vulnerable, I think, particularly in the era of climate change. So this is Avonmouth Port. Some people in the room know that I went to Brazil earlier in the year. I broke my no-fly rule, which I'd had for 10 years I hadn't flown. But I did fly to Brazil for a very worthy reason, which you can ask me about later. But I actually came back by cargo ship. I would have gone both ways by cargo ship, but I couldn't get enough time off work. So I saw this system from the inside. It's absolutely stunning, the amount of stuff that's just travelling the world's oceans, often just because it can make a better profit where it arrives at than where it left, and just the scale of the thing is really quite horrifying. For example, the port we stopped at in Rotterdam was 50 kilometres across. It's actually 4 ports all in one. So anyway, you know, Avonmouth is actually small by comparison. Anyway, so it's a problem of energy intensity, but it's also a problem of these very long supply chains and the fact that that really does reduce our food resilience. And I think that might actually be an important question in terms of our basic supply of food. Again, of course, the question of community bonds, I mean, to me that's important as well. Supermarkets, I mean, I didn't have a picture of the sort of social relationships you might have in the supermarket, but I would argue they are not the same kinds of relationships you might have with local producers in a farmer's market or whatever. Anyway, let's have a little bit of a look at, where are the world's ports? This is a special one for the geographical experts in the room. Unsurprisingly, all the world's ports are at sea level. Let's go on to the next slide and see what we can expect in terms of climate change. Well, you can see there the second bullet point. In 2007, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, who's kind of like the world's best scientists in this area, said that there would be 0.35 metre rise in sea levels by the end of this century. But by just 2 years later, they were having to revise that estimate because ice melting was meaning that sea level rise was twice as fast as they predicted. So this is actually very important in terms of the previous slide that shows you that all ports are at sea level, because they're in very vulnerable places in terms of sea level rise. Now this is quite extraordinary that nobody is investigating this, because when I wrote this in my latest book, I thought, oh, I better get some data, you know, there's no good just sitting over a cup of tea thinking of that.